So good morning and welcome back. We will look at the elements that build brand equity. So the brand elements basically would be all those name, term, sign, symbol, everything that goes on to building a brand equity. So with respect to that, we are saying that the brand knowledge structures based on which companies will be building their brand will depend on the initial choice of the brand elements. So what are brand elements basically? When you see or when you recollect the definition of branding. Okay, so definition of branding is what? Brand is a name, term, sign, symbol, or a combination of them intended to identify a seller or a group of sellers and differentiate them from competition, right? AMA definition. When there's a definition asked, the definition has to be as per whatever has been described. If something has to be explained, explanation would mean how you elaborate and describe in your own terms. But the definition must stick to those terms, phrases in the manner, in the sequence in which it is mentioned. So do have a look at that. So when we talk about brand building exercises, the first thing that we look at is to understand the brand elements. So what are the brand elements? The different types of names that you select, the terms, the symbols, signs, graphics, jingles that you choose, all of these. And therefore, in order to build customer-based brand equity, we are saying that the brand knowledge structure, to build the brand knowledge, like the exercise that all of you have done individually, where I gave you certain categories and told you to either launch a new brand in that category or choose a brand existing which is there and point out the couple of POPs and PODs and highlight the competitive frame of reference. Basically what you would have tried to understand is how is this brand different from others, point of difference, how is the brand similar to others, points of parity, although the names might be different but maybe the the benefits that they're offering is similar, but they would be, all brands would try to distinguish themselves in the market by using certain names, terms, sign, symbol. So brand knowledge structure would depend on the initial choices for the brand elements, and be clear about what are the brand elements. Then the next thing which would be important for building the brand knowledge structure would be the supporting marketing program and the manner in which the brands are integrated. So what kind of marketing programs are you going to build such that the marketing communication is maintained with the customer? So that's what all of you try to do the exercise. You reported if it is an existing brand, what are they doing? What are they doing differently? And then you have also suggested individually that what could be done better if you were the person responsible for that brand or if you were in that team. The other thing which also helps in building customer-based brand equity is that other associations which are indirectly transferred to the brand by linking it to some other entities. So for example, you might want to link a brand based on its history, or you might want to link it based on its origin. Like you said, MTR, somebody chose MTR and said that, it is a South Indian cuisine and this is being manufactured in the South. And so the cuisine taste, authenticity is something that is relevant. Or for example, Nike talking about authentic athletic performance, a company which is expert in doing that, and they are trying to harp on that. So what are the criteria for choosing brand elements? Now remember what you see on the screen, the memorability, meaningfulness. This is not the brand elements. Brand elements are those things which make up a brand. So what makes up a brand? What is your personal brand? Your name, right? What people think about you, how you look, how you come across professionally, what are your skill sets? Similar to that, what is a brand? If you talk about Lux brand, what is the brand element of Lux brand? The name Lux, the way it is written, the graphics that are used, the color combination, right? Airtel, Vodafone, what is the brand element? The name, the term, the sign, the symbol, the color, the graphics, all of these combination. Now the thing which is there on the screen is how do you choose brand elements, which means if you are to be asked or if you are given a task of launching a new brand, then how do you decide what is a brand name that you're going to give? How will you decide what is a color combination? How will you decide what is the type of marketing communication that you want to build around the brand? What do you want people to think about the brand? How do you make sure that the brand is known for something? What color combination would you use in terms of its creatives and the graphics? So the criteria for choosing brand elements are the following, which is memorability. How can you make your brand memorable? So things which are in the marketer's arsenal, which is in the marketer's area of action, would be what do you do? What is the kind of things that you would do so that you make the brand memorable? Next is meaningfulness. How do you ensure that the branding should be meaningful to customers? How do right? So Nike, we saw there is a name connotation, the goddess of victory, the Greek goddess of victory, there's a connotation to that, right? And MTR brands, for example, or for example, Disney brand, so many other brands. So there will be some kind of meaningfulness attached with that brand versus what it is meant for. The next criteria basis on which the brand elements must be chosen would be the likability. Would customers like it? So those things which the company, the marketeer, the brand management team has to do is to think about how to make the brand likable. The next three criteria would be transferability. How do you transfer these things to other areas? For example, Dove is a brand. Dove started with soap, and then we have seen Dove brand is also has got extended into shampoo, conditioner categories, moisturizers. So how do you ensure that the brand Dove, for example, what does it mean? How do people remember it as? Do people like it as? And therefore, this brand, can it therefore be transferred into other categories? And we said, for example, that the Dove brand is so good that it has got extended into shampoo, conditioner, moisturizer, but it may not be a right brand to bring out, say, for example, new detergents for washing clothes because of the moisturizing effect and all that the Dove is known for as a brand. It might not be a good idea to extend brand Dove into, for example, washing utensils, soaps used for washing utensils, because it is not something which will really fit well. For example, Rin and Wheel are brand types of purposes. Now that Rin and Wheel, and if you launch a shampoo by the name of extending the brand name of Rin and Wheel, will people really trust the brand? They will feel it is very harsh, like how the brand Rin and Wheel is actually used for, cleaning clothes, and it has a certain roughness to it. It has a certain, what should I say, strength of cleansing, which perhaps is not the right kind of characteristics or feature which is required for washing the hair, which can lead to loss of hair. So the transferability criteria is how can you extend the brand into other categories if required, right? The next thing is adaptability. How do you adapt it into different marketing environments? How do you protect it? So there are 6 criteria. What you see on the screen is the 6 criteria for choosing brand elements. So if you were to choose brand elements, what are the things that you need to remember? You need to understand what is the first criteria I should look at. How to make it memorable, the memorability. Next thing is meaningfulness. Next is likability, transferability, adaptability, and protectability. So all of these are explained in the subsequent slides. Memorability, the meaningfulness, what we mean by that, whatever I've explained. Likability, how do you make sure that the brand is likable by the customers, the different kinds of descriptive and persuasive things that you do in order to ensure that the marketing communications actually build awareness such that people not only know about the brand, but they actually like the brand. There is a strong, favorable, and unique attachment to the brand in terms of the brand association. And next is the transferability, to which means that can you extend this brand in order to extend this brand into different categories, different kinds of product variants, and different geographic boundaries. So Dove, for example, different product categories. It was in the Western countries. It has also been introduced in the Indian market. So the transferability of the brand in terms of the different kinds of product categories and also geographic categories. Next is the adaptability. That is another criteria. So how adaptable or flexible the brand element can be, so that you can actually ensure that it is transferable to any of the criteria. So it could be as, the slogan, the logo, the characters, whatever it is. Pillsbury, for example, the Doughboy that you see, the Amul Muppet that you see. All right. So these are the ways by which you can ensure that the brand's elements can be built up. Protectability would mean those things which can be legally protected, the intellectual property rights, the design elements, all of these, the copyrights, the designs, whatever can be done. You need to ensure that these are protected. For example, when you want to open a website of a company, the possible domain names need to be restricted. Otherwise, people can copy and forge the names, and there can be fraudulent practices which can be there. So different types of trademarks can be protected, and there are different laws of the land relating to the intellectual property protection. Next is the tactics for brand elements. So therefore, a variety of brand elements are there which can be chosen. And what are the brand elements that are there, and how do you choose That is a tactical aspect. So the brand elements, as we said, comes from the definition of brand. What is a brand? Name, term, sign, symbol, all of that, that definition which is there. So therefore, what are the brand elements? The tactics for brand elements, the different brand elements that can be chosen for brand awareness building or to facilitate the creation of a strong, favorable and unique brand association in the mind of the customer. So what can you do to choose that? So if you were to launch a new brand, what are the things that you need to think about? You would have to think about brand name. You would have to think about the uniform resource locators, your URLs, website addresses that would lead to customers coming and accessing news about the brand, the logos, the symbols, the characters, slogans, and even packaging. All right. So the explanation is again brand name. Again, you have to think about the fact that would the brand name be very linguistically very unique, but if it is very linguistically unique, you might not be able to do global marketing with that. So it has to be again adjusted and then adapted to different cultures, different nuances. So that's why if you see Interbrand consulting companies brand listing, the top 100 brand listing globally that they do, these are normally the brands which are featuring across the world with unique names, with the one name kind of a approach, like Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, all of these, there are just single name. It's just not different names for different places. And that's one of the reasons why since I think the last 5 years, a little bit of change has taken place wherein some Indian brands are featuring, but basically none of the Indian brands had such unique names across the world, not even Tata Group, because they operate with different brand names across the world with different kinds of mergers and acquisition, such that in the global 500 top 100 listing, for example, we never used to find the presence of Indian brands, because most of the brands that were making the names across the globe were mostly global brands which were operating with single names which were recognized globally, irrespective of the country of operation. Of course, nationally, right, like we have the ET 500, the Economic Times 500, we have different business publications that that do rankings, and they do a lot of surveys. So they come out with the top 100 names of brands of different products or different entities or service brands, top 100, top 200, top 500, ET 500 is there. Globally, we have Fortune 500 companies. What are these things? These are the top 500 names of brands which would have been doing very well in terms of the valuation, in terms of the performance. So what are the brand naming guidelines? Mainly, how do you ensure that you create awareness of the brand? How do you ensure that the brand associations are favorably built? How do you ensure that the branding naming procedures are done? Generally, you need to define the objectives. You need to generate possible, set of alternative names. You need to initially select the kind of brands that you think that the company wants to, look at, contemplate before selecting. So out of the options, so a lot of, brainstorming can happen. Creative workshops can be conducted in which you encourage people to contribute. You can have a crowdsourcing kind of a thing where you ask people to suggest brand names, then study and understand which kind of brand names, what could they mean if you have to go for international expansion, how many of these can be really taken up in the international space. So you have multilingualists who can help you to understand if the name is formed in English, if it has to be translated in Mandarin, if it has to be translated in French, German, how would it look or how would it appear, or in terms of the the formation of the words and the formation of the symbols, in order to ensure that your reach is actually globally done. And finally, you need to select the final candidate, which is a brand name. What is the other URL, which means those location of pages on the web, because nowadays we are all high tech and we all will be needing to have our access and presence in the website, be it a web page, be it a social media platform, social media handle, whatever it is. So you need to ensure that your brand also creates and protects the unique URLs as well. The next thing that is to be done is to think about the logos and the symbols. So the logos would range from the different company names, italicized, or the way in which the word marks are done. So the different logos that you have seen, all of you have been exposed to all of these kind of logos and symbols when we have discussed the top 100, top 200 global branding listing, the top brand listing that you've seen in the country, the Fortune 500 listing. So all of these you have seen that in many cases, it is just not the brand name which is written in letters. Sometimes it is in the form of a symbol, it is in the form of a character, it is in the form of a graphical combination, all of these. Right. And of course, you can have different characters, which also goes to symbolize how the brand is portrayed as. There could be slogans, there could be jingles, which are attached to the brand name. So a variety of things, so that, for example, on radio, you hear about different brands and the different ways in which it comes across. And therefore, there are different kinds of ways by which the strong, favorable, and unique association is actually built by the brand. right? So there are different jingles that you can do. All of this can be developed by your marketing communication consultant, your advertising and media consultant. You can have different people who can help you in that. And last but not the least is the packaging aspect, in case your product offer or the offer from the company is a tangible aspect. So from the perspective of both the company and the consumers, the packaging is very much required for products which are required to be stored, which has a tangible thing, which needs to be conveyed from the marketeer to the customer. And the packaging basically is one of the last piece of marketing we talk about. It is also considered to be the last salesman of the product. So basically it describes what the product is all about. It describes the content, it describes the ingredients, and it facilitates transportation and protection. It also assists at home storage. Think about your shampoo bottles, think about your packages of different products that you buy, biscuits or tea, coffee, whatever it is that you buy. And then of course it can aid in product consumption, like for example sauce bottles and all that, the way in which it is actually packaged, the different kinds of packaging material, the juice packs, the poly packs, all of these things, right? So packaging is important when the offer is a tangible aspect of benefit satisfaction coming from the company to the customer. The next thing is that packaging can influence taste, because taste, our sensory organs per se, are very, very receptive to the kind of stimuli that we receive in terms of our sensory stimuli that we receive in terms of auditory, in terms of the visuals, in terms of the tactile, which means the touch elements. So whatever that we can see on a package can lead us to think about the product. It perhaps also can aid in kind of facilitating affordable types of product with low prices. It can also help in terms of promoting the product based on the taste elements. So you give a small pack in which a person can taste the products and find out if they're going to use it or not. So different types of value that comes out of the packaging also can be about whether it can lead to good value or not. The packaging also can be persuasive enough to make a customer buy the product based on how the package appears. Of course, there are different types of packaging. There can be a primary packaging in which the product content is actually stored. There can be a secondary packaging, which means, for example, a bottle of perfume. You can have the main bottle, a glass bottle, which is actually containing the liquid perfume, and then you can have the paper packaging, which contains the main glass bottle, which is secondary packaging. And then of course you can have more packaging, which means several such packs of bottles packed in cartons before they are transported from the marketer to the seller. And then at the retail level, the seller will then take out individual packagings and make it at the retail level, make it available for customers to buy. So there are different types of packaging and the influences. So there are different ways by which the packaging helps in terms of persuasion. And finally, all of these things put together ensures that the brand element is actually going towards equity. And why are we trying to build a brand equity? Because we want to ensure that there's a value to the brand, which means the brand identity emanating out of the combination of all the brand elements must contribute to a very, very strong, favorable and unique kind of a brand awareness created, and to the creation of a brand image in the minds of the customer. And the more cohesively that you can do this will be the way or the manner in which your marketing efforts will be successful. Now let us look at some of the marketing programs that help in terms of building marketing activities towards building the brand, connect or the brand equity. So some of the things which are influencing such strategies and tactics in the marketing programs is because of the contemporary developments that you see in the marketplace, the changing consumer preferences, the development of new technology, the development of new devices, the digitalization and connectivity, whether it is the internet, within a company, different devices, mobile devices, different screens that are coming in. People are exposed to different kind of screens. The rise of disintermediation, which means you will have the capacity to market directly to consumers without the help of intermediaries. So when you remove the intermediary from the picture between the business and the customer, so you don't have any amount of dealer or agencies in between. So there could be a scenario in that aspect also, so people can directly market to customers. There could also be the reintroduction of intermediaries, which is re-intermediation, which means that you reintroduce the concept of a dealer in between the channel. For example, Eureka Forbes directly market to customers because they were not getting retail slots in the dealer outlets to stock their AquaGuards and their vacuum cleaners. But with the advance of the years as Eureka Forbes and their products got very much introduced in the market, acclimatized, or in terms of acceptability of the products grew, it became quite meaningful for the dealers to stock water purifiers and vacuum cleaners. And so we do see some of these models from, say, Eureka Forbes also going through the dealer channel as well. So customization and customerization, which means you are making tailored products and ingredients provided to customers. So these aspects also help in terms of understanding the new age contemporary developments in marketing. For example, when you order on Amazon or Flipkart or Myntra, or you're ordering on Swiggy or Zomato, what is happening? Each customer's order is different from the other. So that is happening, that what is happening here, it is customization is happening based on each customer's requirement, right? So these things are now the norm, which was earlier not the case. And of course, you have industry convergence. Industry convergence in the sense that many industries coming together to provide the platform. For example, when you go to buy a car or a vehicle, not only are you going on a platform to see the different car dealers, but you also want to see who's going to offer you the best rates, the insurance providers, the registration formalities to be completed, all of these things put together. If you want to buy or rent a house, for example, nobroker.com, so you go there because you don't want to face the kind of situation where you don't know where to look for a new house or a house to be bought, and you don't want to face the hassle of meeting a broker, and you know that brokers have a lot of complications. So this is a platform, for example, nobroker.com, or for, say, 99acres.com, platforms like this, which bring together different real estate developers, different customers, different banks to provide the home loans, registration formalities to be completed, interior decorators to be availed of when a new house is bought and people want to decorate their internal furnishings and all that, and leading to several other aspects like electricians, plumbers, carpenters. So a lot of these things are happening wherein the industry basically converges at a point and ensures that you really are able to provide customer solution. For example, aggregator concept that we know of is basically nothing but different kinds of customers need being fulfilled by different types of service providers. So what are the implications in terms of the practice for brand management? So the brand management people have to think about all these contemporary developments, take the help of digitization and technology, take the help of the understanding that how far are you going to solve the customer's problem in terms of individualization, and ensure that you have a creative and original thinking which goes into generating fresh ideas. So you might have, for example, an Airbnb can be motivating to generate an OYO, or you can have different kinds of food companies coming up. You can have a Swiggy, Zomato coming up. You can look at the likes of Uber and Ola and see how far these can be taken off in a local market. You'd see a variety of such activities coming up in such a way that you're, copying an Amazon and building a Flipkart or building unique marketing models doesn't become too much Herculean. You can actually home grow a lot of brands. So therefore, I suggest that you relook at the link that I have sent across to all of you. The Indian Brand Equity Foundation, IBEF, is a website that I have shared with all of you in the learning and management system, the LMS, wherein you can see different types of homegrown companies and brands which are actually making a lot of name in the market. And you can also see the reports on IBEF about the different marketing activities being done by different companies in this Indian market. All right, and you'll see how these kind of marketing programs are actually built up, and that gives you an idea about how do you really go ahead. So what are some of the things that you need to really think about? You need to think about personalizing the marketing activities so that you really are going to make sense to the customer for whom certain things are required. You need to understand that these personalization of marketing activities would spread across experiential marketing. What kind of experiences can you give to customers? Should they visit your outlet? Should they visit your website? Should they visit your store, your restaurant, your places where they're actually facing the moment of truth, which is the interaction between the customer and the brand? What kind of one-to-one marketing can you really afford to do for your customers? How much of it is relevant? How much of it is required? And if there is any permission marketing required, which means you need to take permission from the customer in order to send, communicate, or be in touch with the customer. So some of these new aspects of marketing are required because you need to blend in what is the contemporary requirement in the market to the customer requirements and ensure that you have a befitting, effective marketing reach, which ensures ensures that your customer-based brand equity marketing process is actually effective. So one-to-one, permission, experiential marketing are all potentially very, very effective means of getting customers more actively involved with their brand. So you saw a customer, for example, the Nike ID that the person who was taking up the brand highlighted, wherein you can customize the Nike products based on various aspects of the shoes, in terms of the fabrics, in terms of making the shoe, the size, all of that. Right? Experiential marketing is again focusing on experience, as the term says, experiential, that is experience-based kind of a marketing. It focuses on the consumption situation, and you see the likes of it being done for all types of marketing, be it a cafe, coffee day, a barista, you go to any of the restaurants, you go to any of the fine dining, you talk about any, even going to a very, normal and a regular Udupi, you are trying to ensure that the customer who comes there buys the things and can go out faster. It could mean keeping multiple cash counters in order to ensure that there is not much of customer traffic being clogged up at the point of sale of supermarkets, of malls. So what do you see? Well, you're focusing on the aspect in which the marketers have identified that the experience of customers is very, very required. You have to understand that customers are now going to be taking all these kind of decisions based on the rational and emotive aspects, which means not only subjectively evaluating how a brand feels and appears to them, but also in terms of does it make sense in terms of the judgments that they create out of the brand performance, the judgment in terms of the value creation, all of this. So rational and emotional aspects are taken into account by the customer when selecting or when they are trying to patronize and re-patronize a brand. One-to-one marketing would ensure that you're actually able to communicate meaningfully with the customer. So it means that you need to find out what really works for the customer. You need to ensure that you really make a meaningful value proposition to the customer such that the switching cost of the customer will become high. That's why I have highlighted to you, for example, cross-selling of financial products in banks or financial services companies ensures that you make sure that whatever are the company requirements or the company products that you have with you are fitting for customers' requirement at any point of time. Now, you might have personal loan, you might have education loan, you could have FDs, you could have savings account, current account with a bank. Now, not every product is required by every customer. Some customers will require some of the products. So what combination of that is going to be very much defined by each customer's need. But when you have variety of products in your company, the reason why you need to ensure that you really talk about all these products to your customer is only because you need to understand each customer will have different kinds of needs at different times of their lives. All that you need to ensure is to understand what are the needs that are surfacing at any given point of time and try and connect your solution to their needs and ensure that type of need satisfaction of a customer is very unique to himself or herself or their family. Hence, one-to-one marketing is to that extent. It is just not in terms of ordering. For example, the same be available in terms of when you book things online and you're just booking one plate of idli from Swiggy's or Zomato's, or you're just picking up one book from Amazon or one particular article from Amazon. So that's also getting an impact. But what really is going to differentiate your marketing activities to understand how you treat these customers differently based on their needs and based on the values that the firm has to offer. All right. So you need to look at one-to-one marketing in terms of 5 key steps. The first is to identify customers individually and address them. So here in this case, customers who would be purchasing it for their own consumption or their household consumption, and therefore they are consumers. So identify the consumers, differentiate them by value and needs. So not everybody will have the similar needs. Not everybody is same. So people will be identified in terms of their differences. Right? So identify the differences and see that you're able to meet up to them. And of course, identify the similarity. So the heterogeneity and the homogeneity needs to be identified by the marketers in order to make an effective marketing communication effort. Third aspect of that is interact with them more cost efficiently and effectively. That's why build in technology and devices wherever possible. Say for example, the ATMs, that ATM machines that you have, or the internet banking facility or the phone banking facility that you've given from the banks to the customer is to ensure that routine repetitive transactions which can be performed by the customers themselves using technology can be done such that the branch personnel of the bank or the bank personnel can be be more effectively utilized to interact with the customers only when that particular human interaction is required to add value. Otherwise, any kind of mundane routine activity which can be performed by machines, by technology, should be done by that, and ensure that it also ensures a lot of other factors, which is security, encryption, and ensuring that banking transactions remain safe and trustworthy, reliable as well. So what happens is you need to understand what amount of technology, what amount of cost efficient systems can be used in order to deliver certain services to customers in a very seamless manner. The next or the fourth aspect would be to customize some aspect of the firm's behavior. So customization wherever required, fitting in your offer to the customer needs. The last one, brand the relationship. So you have different kinds of customers. Say the financial services sector, we have high net worth customers, we have customers based on whether they're corporate customers or they're retail customers, we have customers based on whether they are small and medium businesses. So you can identify the relationship and categorize them in order to ensure that you are able to market to them very, very effectively. Now, permission marketing was actually was enunciated by one of the famous marketeers and also practitioners of marketing called Seth Godin, who said that encourage customers to participate in a long-term interactive marketing campaign in which they are rewarded in some way for paying attention to increasingly relevant messages, which means what? You need to ensure that you take the permission of customers, which means you need to have a long-term interaction. Where will you get customer insights? You have to get your customer insights from the market. You have to get it from them. If you do not maintain that dialogue with the customers, or the conversation rather with the customers, how do you ensure that these kind of customer insights continue to come in? So therefore, permission marketing says that you need to encourage customers to participate in long-term interactive marketing campaign. How do you do that? You need to anticipate what is required. You need to ensure that these kind of efforts are personal and they are relevant. And permission marketing can be contrasted to interruption marketing, which means when you take the permission of the customer knows, anticipates that there is a certain amount of communication that's going to come to me, which is going to be relevant, and therefore I need to look forward to it, which means you ensure that the active interest of the customer is there and not interruption. Interruption marketing would be when the marketeer, the brand management team or the company makes the effort to communicate because it is in their interest to communicate with the customers, thinking that the more they will communicate, the more they will be able to persuade the customer to buy. So if you do that and without the permission of the customer, then you are interrupting his or her schedule and trying to barge in and put in your point of view or your proposition to the customer. In most cases, what happens when somebody is being interrupted, the person may not like it. And definitely when the likability is not there, the favorability is not there, definitely the consideration for purchase will not be there. So you need to appear cordial, you need to be courteous, you need to understand and take the permission of the customer in terms of reaching out to him or her individually. What are the 5 steps in permission marketing? First step, offer the prospect why they should volunteer in terms of giving the time, in terms of giving information, in terms of receiving the information. Offer the interest of prospect or a kind of a plan over a period of time to make the customers aware about the product, what they're going to get. So you could offer newsletters, you could offer things like updated, periodic updation in their emails, you could send them anytime. So you can see, that is why you will see in the internet, in the websites, there'll be a place wherein if you want to unsubscribe, you need to click a certain button. So the action to take would be either you are subscribing to something or you are not subscribing to something. And then some places they will ask for your email ID, saying that if you want to receive newsletters, updates, anything that you want from the company, please provide your email ID. And in most cases, it is email ID and not a phone number. And there is also the other hand, where once these kind of emails and newsletters and updates are triggered, there is also attached in that same email at the end of it, which will be that in case you want to unsubscribe from this kind of communication, this is what you need to do. So they will give a place where you can click and you can unsubscribe if it is required, which means you are taking the permission of the customer at all point of time in order to not only communicate, but also maintain the contact in the future. So you reinforce the incentive, you offer additional incentives in order to get more permission. So there could be a call to action button saying that if you're going to order from this information thing that we have sent you, you could get some promotional offer, you could get some discounts, you could get some preferred kind of offers. So over time, the fifth thing that you need to do in permission marketing would be to leverage the permission to change customer behavior towards profit, in terms of ensuring that the customer does what he or she needs to do in order for you as a company to get increased or enhanced return on the marketing effort. So when you're integrating the product or the brand into the marketing program, you need to ensure that the marketing mix should be built or designed in such a way that the brand image is developed in the manner in which you desire it to be, which means a strong, favorable, unique brand image should be built up, and that can only be built up with the help of product strategy, pricing, and channel. Right now, what is this product? This would mean the offer of the company. And how can the offer be? The offer can be in terms of both tangible and intangible aspects, right? So when you talk about the value, the quality of an offer, it would mean, quality would mean those features or characteristics of that particular offer which help it to satisfy the need. And what is value? Value would be basically what the customers perceive as the benefit, less of the cost that they incur. Cost would mean not only the financial cost, the time cost, the efforts that they put in order to get the product. Right? So you will have a lot of these things which is into the quality and value proposition. And of course, the value chain. Do you remember the value chain? You are studying in the strategic marketing. Do you remember value chain? Anybody can put in the chat box, what is a value chain? You need not unmute yourself, put it in the chat box. So there are 9 activities in the generic value chain enunciated by Michael Porter. So there are various activities that need to be considered when you are actually proposing value creation by a company, right? So value chain ensures that you oversee those activities which creates maximum value, and then you ensure that there is optimum amount of input, management, administrative efforts, and marketing efforts that goes in to ensure that each element in the value chain contributes to the value creation by the company. What is relationship marketing? Therefore, relationship marketing is again to do with how your offer connects with the customer. So how your product connects with the customer. How can it be connected? It could be a mass customization. It could be after marketing. That is after you do the marketing, what are the things that are required? It could be after sales service. It could be installation. It could be assisting the customer in terms of installation, providing the necessary guidelines, help, information, anything that is required. And of course, loyalty programs like you have, for example, if you buy so much, you get so many points, and those reward points can later be encashed for money. You could be also accumulating air miles, like you see in the aviation sector, when you fly, buying a ticket, air ticket, so many miles that you fly, you get air miles for that, and then you can leverage that to perhaps get a discount on your future ticket, or you can even buy a variety of products and merchandise from there, whatever they have to offer. Right? Pricing strategy would be those things. That is the aspect that is charged by the marketeer for providing their offer to the customer. So pricing would be something. So if there are price sensitive customers, they are basically looking at less price, economical prices, and they're looking at combination of offers. They're looking at value creation, which will ensure that the pricing is something that makes meaningful value creation for the customer. Now, what are the price premiums? The price premium, among the most important brand equity benefits, are building of a strong brand. Consumer price perceptions. So consumers will often rank the brands according to price tiers. So they will try to see which are the low price kind of a products, which are the medium price, and of course there could be premium price products, which are basically your assorted and luxury goods kind of a product. And why this pricing is important? Because pricing will finally lead to the contribution of revenue. Pricing is the only P in the marketing mix which actually contributes to revenue. The others are all cost centers. You build a product, you have to invest in research and development, you have to build products, you need technology for that. You need to ensure that product development itself is a very, very time consuming process, returns of which will only come from the revenue, right? So the pricing is the only element in the marketing mix. You talk about product building, you talk about, places or channel building, you have to shell out product pricing, or you have to shell out revenue sharing with your channel partners. If you're talking about promoting the product, it is all about advertising, sales, promotion, publicity, public relations. All aspects of that again has to do with investment of money. So everyday low pricing could be something which is the acronym of which is EDLP, everyday low pricing, which you see in the likes of, say, various supermarkets, which ensure that any day that you go there, the prices are assuredly low. But in terms of high-low pricing could be, something which is practiced and seen in places like Big Bazaar and all, where they will have typically 1 or 2 days in a week when they say that this is the day, typically a midweek or a weekend, when there are typically low prices which are guaranteed. What are the channel strategy? Channel strategy means a channel through which your product or service is actually distributed. So manner by which a product is sold or distributed, it can have an impact on the resulting equity. So channel strategy would mean the design and management of intermediaries. So which are the intermediaries, or who are the intermediaries? Typically wholesalers, distributors, brokers, and retailers. And you need to look at certain things like the marketer can decide to go and market the products directly themselves. So you have direct channels, and that can be facilitated by mailing, by phones. That is your the phone channels that are there where people are calling. Call centers. You can have electric means, like for example, Dell used to start, have the online sales of their laptops directly from Dell to customers without the use of intermediaries. And for example, in-person visits, Eureka Forbes, where they have been practicing their personal selling. The personal selling model of Eureka Forbes is a classic case study by itself, because they decided to go and sell their products directly to the homes of the customers by going to the homes of the customers using their own sales force. Indirect channels would be those third parties, like for example, agents, brokers, or their representatives, wholesaler, distributors, the retail stores that you see. So, you want to buy shampoo, you want to buy Sunsilk, which is from Hindustan Unilever. You're not going to go to Hindustan Unilever store and buy it. You're going to go to a retail store which stocks Sunsilk kind of a products. Along with Sunsilk, there could be Pantene, there could be other kinds of Garnier's shampoo and all. So what is happening? You are actually, as a customer, the end customer is going to a retail store and buying the product. They're not going to the main company. So these are the indirect channels that are really there. There are some strategies which are also there as part of indirect channels. What are the strategies? The strategies are push and pull strategies. Which are the push and pull strategies? Push and pull strategies, basically those strategies that are devoted to the enhancement of management activities. So when you are trying to employ a strategy by which you encourage customers to come to the retail stores or agents or wholesalers, distributors to buy the product, that is a pull strategy. That is, you are encouraging. Now, more of it is like television advertisement, radio advertisement, billboards, outside hoardings and all that, by which you make sure your brand and your product is well known to customers, such that customers now come to the retail stores, or they come to the intermediaries demanding the product. They want to buy the product. So that's a pull strategy. Alternatively, marketers can also devote their selling efforts to the channel members. They would try to reward the channel members, saying that if you sell so many units of our products, say you stock Vivek's or Giriya's or Adishwar outlet, being encouraged to sell more of the refrigerators, say of Samsung or IFB, and the marketers will tell them, if you sell so many units of this refrigerator of this variant new model, we would give you a percentage of the commission. It would be perhaps a percentage of commission which is more than another competitor's commission. So the way in which you motivate and inspire these dealers to sell more of the products themselves is a push strategy. So push strategy is the effort by the marketer in order to push the products or the kind of brands down the intermediaries in order to sell it to the customer. So the intermediaries also act as the salespeople. Their salespeople are acting on your behalf. And this kind of push strategy is not only there for consumer durables, it is also there for brokers. For example, financial brokers, you're selling insurance, you're selling any kind of financial products. You could have brokers wherein, yeah, Shreyas, I got your point. I've got your message. So another, I think 5 minutes, it's 9:45. So another 5 minutes, I'll stop so that you can start. So broking can be not only for physical products. If you want to buy houses, you want to buy commercial property, you want to buy mutual fund, insurance, you want to buy shares, you can use brokers, right? So that can be used. So all this push strategy can be used on the channel. And basically, channel support is required because you need to ensure that the channel reaches or the channel ensures the enhancement and last mile reach to your customers. The others were that web strategies, where you have internet. Of course, now you see the era in which a lot of these web activities or a lot of these internet marketing activities are actually done. Marketing communication, What is marketing communication? Therefore, marketing communication is those means by which the communication is done between the company and the customers in order to inform, persuade, and remind the customers directly, indirectly about the brands that they are selling. And the new media is cluttered with a lot of brands, lot of channels, lot of media options, lot of clutter, lot of media fragmentation. Basically, everyone wants to create a certain desired brand image. How are you going to ensure that this happens? There are different kinds of information processing models. Let me just share another screen with you. Please have a look at these sources as well. Tell me if you can see this. There is a model of advertising called Dagmar approach of model. Dagmar approach, which means basically, one second, let me just share this. Okay, Dagmar and the IDA model is something that you will need to look at. The Dagmar approach basically talks about defining advertising goals for measuring advertising results. And this Dagmar approach, if you look at, it has the following. Let me reshare the screen again. So what you see here is, this is an acronym for defining advertising goals for measured advertising results. And this was basically introduced by Russell Coley in 1961. And this means that each purchase cycle, a prospect or a customer would go through the following four stages, which is awareness, comprehension, conviction, and action. And basically what is happening is that in the communication process, when you are building any advertisement, customers may be unaware of the brand. The next stage would be to create the awareness. Next stage would be to create the comprehension and image, that is understanding an image, and then the attitude and action, which you see very similar to what was shown in the CBB model. All right, so you can have a look at that. I'll be sending across the link to this as well. The other aspect of this is to look at the AIDA approach, AIDA. Have you heard of this term, or AIDA model? AIDA model, let me show you this one. This also I'll be sending the link to all of you. So the AIDA model is that it is a model of communication in which we look at the AIDA is an acronym which stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. So this AIDA model was developed by an American, marketeer, Elmo Lewis, and the concept actually originates from, psychological aspect, which says that, you need to understand that marketing communication per se, that is marketing communication will proceed from seeking the interest of customers, but before interest, you need to catch the attention of customers. So attention, interest, desire, and that leading to the action, which means the purchase. So you need to draw the attention of people. So many people will be drawn to the fact that you're, advertising about a product, leading to interest. And then out of the interested people, few will desire the product. And finally, fewer among those who are desiring the product will actually buy the product. So it is a sequential step, which is finally leading to consumer purchase. And each of the steps are defined in the material that I'll be sending across to all of you. So coming to this stage, we will continue with the IMC process tomorrow. Now, I would like to request Shreyas, if you can continue with your presentation. If there's any doubt by any one of you regarding the content, please come back on the LMS. Yeah, so Shreyas is here to tell us about that assignment. Great. Yeah, Shreyas had to do a brand reporting for any of the brand in the what was your category? Tourism. Start. Shreyas can't hear you. You are on mute. So Shreyas has taken Make My Trip.
Yes, yes ma'am.
Continue.
1 second.
Yeah.
I'm not able to. Yes.
So Shreyas is the last person to make the presentation on that brand positioning guidelines. Few POPs, PODs, and the competitive frame of reference. Yes, good to go.
Yes, ma'am. Hello, everyone. I am Shreyas Raikar. Make My Trip is an online traveling industry which was founded on year 2000 by Deep Kalra. Its headquarters is based on Haryana, India. A competitive frame of reference. Make My Trip is a travel industry that provides a range of travel services like booking flights, buses, cabs, hotels, planning holidays, packages, etc. It follows the rules and regulations of COVID-19 and maintain the sanitations given by the giving proper guidelines to the customers and maintain the safety throughout the system. A point of parity. A point I felt the homepage of Make My Trip is very attractive compared to Yatra.com or any of its competitors.
Mhm.
It has a lot of services compared to Yatra. Like it has some extra services like visa, charter flights, homestays, holiday packages, activities, etc. Uh, a point of difference. There are some services which are given extra by Make My Trip. They are My Business. My Business is a platform where people who want to start a new business can start a business in Make My Trip. It is a B2B service, and it has a service called My Cash. My Cash acts like a e-wallet which allows you to withdraw some amount from your bank and deposit in your My Cash account in MMT, which uh, uh, which enables customers or passengers to fix their budget for a trip, and they can spend effectively and efficiently to the rest of their trip. And even Make My Trip has a special feature called as a trip money, where trip money has partnership with Make My Trip, where trip money lends you is service provided means it gives you trip loans and trip credit cards, so where the customers can enjoy their trip without any cash limitations or anything. Thank you, ma'am.
Great, Shreyas. Nice. So my point would be, one is you have reported what they are doing. Any one or two points which you think they can do, which is your suggestion?
Yes, ma'am. Means local cab service they can start, ma'am. They don't have local cab service. They can means every customer. Local cab service is a very small service where the customer will be attached to their company, and if they want to plan any new holiday plan or anything, they can directly go to MMT and book a ticket or anything. And one more thing is none of the travel industry or service industries don't give any only driver service, ma'am. The people will be having cars in their home, but they need some drivers, only a driver. Then if MMT provides a driver service, it will be great for many of the customers, ma'am.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So ideas can be a lot. The feasibility of that can be seen by the businesses in terms of providing it, right? So basically, when you talk about these, the additional needs and additional services that you're talking about, basically, do you think that the competitive frame of reference is actually enhanced?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the competitive frame of reference then for this company? Is it like even the local cabs? The fact that even the fact that I have to do the bookings of all these things myself, if I'm not taking the help of these, at least standalone, I book my tickets, and then standalone, I need to choose hotels, I need to choose conveyance, or if I'm traveling from here to, for example, Raipur, and I'm going to visit a place there, and I have to book the hotel. So if this was not available, an aggregator like Make My Trip is not available, what happens to a customer like me? I have to book my air tickets by visiting.
Yes, ma'am. Physically, you should go to the airport or any service local shops. Then the time will be waste, and you will not get some offers or any discounts, or the chances are very low, ma'am. If you go physically or anything.
Physically or anything, even so, as a time constraint or the convenience is what the customer is looking at, the competitive frame of reference would also include any of the local cabs, any of the local cabs, including your radio taxis like your Uber and Ola, and of course your individual cab people, right? Because what is happening is, if these kind of people are there on these kind of aggregating websites, then customers have a fair chance of choosing those services. Because if there is an individual, for example, in your local place, you might know 3-4 local cab operators, and then you may not take an Ola or a Uber, but you might call the local person whom you know means basis his reliability or the trustworthiness, right? So you will call that cab person. But if you're going to an outstation city, those kind of things become a hassle, because you don't know the cab people there, you don't know the local operators there, so that becomes an issue. So therefore the competitive frame of reference will be all encompassing, which means all the possible operator sites, booking buses, cabs, or places of stay, and the entire packaging, the holiday packaging, right? Even to the extent of the railway services.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you think the second point is required, competitive frame of reference, what you've put, rules and protocols of COVID-19, or is it a POD?
No, ma'am, not that necessary.
No, is it a POD? Is it a point of difference with others?
Yes, point of difference, not ma'am. Point of parity, ma'am. Means everyone is following these protocols and norms from the government, ma'am.
Yes, and they are also doing the same.
Yes, ma'am.
And what is achieved when you say that we also are doing the same thing? We also are following the guidelines. What happens?
Means the customer feels safe and they can trust their brand, ma'am.
Yes, yes. So therefore, do you think this should be part of this slide, or it should be part of POP?
No, ma'am, no, ma'am.
It's okay. Yeah, you got the point, right? You understood where we are coming from, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good effort. And thank you for timing also, the timing that you have done, which means you announced, or you made sure that 5 minutes before your presentation time, you actually told me. So we are able to finish your presentation very comfortably, 2 minutes even before the completion of the class. So it's not a hurried way. Great. Thank you, Shreyas. Shreyas is presenting. Any question from the rest of the students in the class? Shreyas, kindly ask them if they have any query, any doubts.
Guys, any questions? Please ask.
Now, the reason why we are encouraging people to participate also or ask is because in your exams, you might have to relate all these examples or, strategies which you see in different companies. You might have to use it for some answers where you need to elaborate, comment, you need to develop some kind of, plans in your answers by which you say that this is how we can go ahead and make more branding initiatives. So whenever someone is making a presentation, that person has already done elaborate work to find out information pertaining to that brand. So when you as a co-student in the class, when you ask questions, it is like ready-made, like instant coffee kind of a ready-made information from that person, which ensures that you stock up on information, gain on knowledge without spending additional time. All right, I think it's quite fairly explanatory. Kindly drop in the PPT and the video and put it in the LMS Shreyas so that I can mark it and assign the marks for that as well.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I will see all of you in the next class, and please do revise the portions, come back with any kind of doubts, any clarifications required. Thank you very much for joining on time. Stay safe.
Thank you, ma'am.